Today I'm kitbashing a Night Lords Daemon Prince because the original Daemon Prince model is really cool and all, but it has nothing of the terror of the night and monster in the dark aesthetic that Night Lords come with. And as a base for this kitbash conversion, I'm using the Vangorian Lord, or the Mother of Nightmares from the vampires from Age of Sigmar. It's this really big monster with bat-like wings that is sitting on a wall, but I have to change the torso because it's a sort of, I don't know, almost bare torso, doesn't look much like a Space Marine, and I really want this to be a Night Lords Daemon Prince. I want to show that this was a Space Marine at one point, and now it's ascended to Daemon Prince. See, that's more of a horror of the night, ready to pounce on an unsuspecting victim. But here's the thing. The Mother of Nightmares, the Vangorian Lord, has this sort of double torso. One is like a monster and then the vampire is sitting on top of that and the wings sort of come out of that lower body. I'm not a big fan of that for a Daemon Prince, so what I'm going to try to do is just stick those wings on his back. Like this, a little crisscrossed, and then I'm going to see if I can stick some regular arms on the front. And I got this baggie of old Daemon Prince arms. And when I say old, I don't mean I used bits in my other Daemon Princes and this is left over. No, this is like 20 years old. This is the old Daemon Prince model. And there's some really cool claws in here, like this one. You can make a nice sort of overgrown power claw. But I think it's too bulky. You know, this would be... Nah, that wouldn't fit, so I need to go look for something else. So how about some of the new Daemon Prince arms? I got these over here, and they come with these nice big claws over there. But I still think, I mean, if I just hold this together, it could work. It could work, but I still think it's a little bit too bulky and too muscular. I want this really sleek, sort of nasty bat-like thing that can glide through the night. Even though it's massive and big and strong and super powerful, I want it to look like it could move silently and quietly. And it's gonna be the Flesh Eater Courts. Whoa, there goes my little Daemon Prince. They have these arms on the ghouls, the big ones, that I have assembled as Crypt Flayers or Horrors or whatever it's called for the vampire faction. And I have a bunch of these really nasty claws, so I'm sure I can find a left and a right arm over here. Yeah, that will do. These are good. They are strong and they look muscly, but still thin and wiry. And I think that's great for this monster of the night. They are a bit short though, you know, these are really big monster's legs and he has these short arms. It has a little bit of a T-Rex vibe, but I'm okay with it, you know. If a Daemon Prince, the Night Lord who kills things with his own claws, he wants to be up close and personal. He doesn't want to have it far away and just sort of smushed into the ground. No, he wants to make it personal. So he needs a head though. And for that we go to some of the newer Flesh Eater Courts models. They have these Morbag Knights, this sort of bat-like creature hunched over, walking on the ground. And they come with these nice sort of monstrous bat heads. So I'm just going to take one of these that has his mouth fairly open, because I want to kind of give the impression that maybe he's giving out an echolocating screech or just a shriek that terrifies the enemies. And maybe I need to take a second to explain why I'm making such a monstrous Daemon Prince for the Night Lords. Well, the Night Lords, they're not really into possession or mutation or anything like that at all. They just want to be themselves. They're happy as they are slaughtering innocent victims in the night. Well, here's the thing. See, a World Eater kind of aspires to become Khorne, to emulate Khorne, to be slaughter embodied. And so it makes sense for them to ascend to Daemon Prince hood. But for Night Lords, it's rather a fall. It's rather a weakness. It's rather a monster you don't want to become, but that still really embodies the Night Lord Legion vibe and aesthetic. So that's why a real monster of the night. Not something to look up to, rather a horror story that Night Lords tell themselves before bedtime. Now I've done a bit of green stuff work and I really don't want to paint this thing fully assembled. With the wings on the back, it's just going to be hell to get to his back and paint it all properly. So what I did was give him a glob of green stuff and then push the wing in and then gently remove it, so that I now have this cavity that the wing fits in after I've eventually painted everything. But first I want to add a bit of scarring to this miniature, because I saw Trovarian's video about kitbashing Lucius, and there he gives Lucius lots of scars. And I think that's a pretty cool idea, because I do that with the armor. I add lots of battle damage and holes, bullet holes and scratches and dents and so on, but I don't normally do that on the faces or on the exposed skin of my miniatures. So let's just do that on this Daemon Prince. And I don't know if you can see all the scarring right now on the camera, but you know, once I paint it, there will be some grime going into those little grooves and it will pop a lot more. But I'm going to cover a lot of it up anyway, because he needs some armor. First of all, a chest piece and some shoulder pads from the Daemon Prince kit. And then I've also got 2 of these things over here, which I guess are bracers. And I only have 1 Daemon Prince shoulder pad because I used the others on my Valkyrie Daemon Princess. So I have to improvise here, and I'm gonna use one of the shoulder pads from my 8-bound. Now that's enough armor for now. I really want to keep him a beast so he can't be too heavily armored. And it's time for some trophies, starting with some flayed skin. You know, I did my Night Lords Abaddon. He has skin on his leg, a skin crotch flap, a skin cloak, a skin banner. But I want to do something different with this guy. I want to see if I can make some really messed up purity seals. So what I have here are a couple of strips of green stuff. And I'm just going to tack these onto his armor, but also just straight onto the body. I'm gonna fray them by pulling on them with my tweezers, and then I'm gonna nail them to his body by drilling a little hole and then dropping in this tiny miniature nail. And these are just little sewing pins without the colorful bulb on top. You can get a whole box of these like this on Amazon. It's super cheap. They are way too long, of course, you have to cut them to size, but they look like miniature nails. They're fantastic for this. There, that looks pretty brutal, I think. These scraps nailed to his armor and to his flesh. It's a nasty little detail, but it's not enough. Let's get some more trophies. And this comes from Pete the Wargamer. It's his Dead Animal Bits sprue. And it's got a couple of these heads on hooks and some hands. And all of that fits really well with Night Lords too. There, a couple of hands on spikes. I like it because it gives you the impression that maybe he was hunting down thieves. And that's how he punished them. Maybe. Or maybe he was just having fun hunting stuff in the night. Now I feel his crotch flap is a little bit bare, so let's glue in a little bit of chain and a couple of skulls as trophies. And I like to cut off the bottom part of the skull, sorry, the back part of the skull, like this. So it's flat, so it's easier to fit on the mini, and also if you have a piece of cloth, it sort of sinks into the cloth and it just looks more natural. And I think like this, he looks pretty cool. Perched on top of that wall, looking out, wings on his back. I think it's a pretty nasty looking miniature already, but I want to do a lot with the base. I want to make it look like his lair, like he's sitting there and there's like trophies or something here on the bottom. But to do that, I need to know exactly where the wall is going, and to do that, I need to finish him, paint him up, glue in the wings, all that stuff. So let's just start painting. And I've primed him grey, but I'm gonna try to make a very ashy light grey skin, because I want to make him look like he's really a desiccated vampire, one that's drying up, that has no blood inside of him and desperately needs his fix. So I've got here 3 greys. This is Celestra Grey, Grey Seer and a white actually, so that I can just stipple onto his skin and make it look rough and dry and dusty and ashy. Next up are a couple of enamels, and I've got Umbral Nightshade and Decrepit Filth, both from Villainy Inks. One is blue, the other is black, but they are both quite glossy. So I'm also giving it a pass with some chalky enamels. This is All Is Dust, and I got Decay of Death, both of them again from Villainy Inks. Not bad for a quick skin effect. I think it needs a little bit more shading in the recesses, but I want to do the armor first to see how that contrasts with the skin. So of course we're going to start with some Night Lords blue. Okay, that has made the skin a little bit lighter due to the contrast of the dark armor with the light skin, but I gotta wait for the decal to finish drying and setting, so let's work on some of those skin strips. And if you want to know exactly how I paint this skin, just check out my Night Lords Abaddon video. There I go into a little bit more detail. He's starting to look like a Night Lords monster already. Take a look. I finished the skin, I did some rusty chain and nails, did some work on the skulls. The armor still needs highlighting, but what I thought is true, I need to shade him a little bit more, because he's just too flat. He doesn't have any real depth on his skin, so I'm just taking some more of that Decrepit Filth and I'm just gonna fill in the recesses. Now, you know, the Night Lords, the symbol is these red wings next to a skull, so why not give this guy a little bit of red wings as well? So I'm gonna do his wings using Caput Mortem, this very nice sort of desaturated burgundy from Villainy Inks. And I'm gonna model this a lot with some of the blue, the Umbral Nightshade, the black, and all the other stuff to make this look like a really nasty wing. There, those are some nice torn wings. I like them. They might need a little bit more work. I think I desaturated them a little bit too much. Need a little bit more pink in there just to make them look more like they're the red wings of a Night Lord's icon. But I did a little bit more work. I did some grime on the armor and on the hair. I also did his ears red because, you know, it makes it another Night Lord's icon over there with the red wing ears next to his head. I think it works out well. The mouth, some blood effects on the claws, a little bit of grime on the skulls and on the hairy parts of the model and the feet. The armor, of course, a little bit more grime too, and a little bit of battle damage, a little bit of silver here and there. all of it's coming together. But now that I glued the wings in place, like I said before, I have this massive gap over here on the top of the mini. So I'm gonna have to cover that up. And I'm gonna cover this up with some tufts of grass, because why not give him some proper fur? So first I'm gonna make sure that those two gaps, that the wings where they connect to the body, that they are completely covered with some fur sticking out. Then I'll cut some of these grass tufts in half, because that will make it easier to fit them under the shoulder pad and along the sides of the wings. And there he's all covered up, and I think it looks pretty good. I went all the way down his back to his tail, but I made it like a nice V shape, so it looks a little bit more natural. And here on the front, I had a few tufts poking out alongside his head to just give him that bestial look from the front as well. I think it works well. I might have to grime it up a little bit though, but I think it's time to start working on his lair, on that base that he is sitting on. But I painted myself into a bit of a corner here. See, I have this base ready with nice pavers, and then this piece of the building needs to go on there. But what I want is to add lots of bits and pieces onto the base that are sort of leaning against these walls. I want skulls here, I want maybe body parts, like a pile of trophies. And I can't really do that without gluing this all together and putting it all on the base. The only other option I have is to just start clipping off this pillar. And then I just glue this building in place, and I think this is a good starting point. It'll work. I'll figure out a way to get him on his base and not make that gap over there show. But one thing I really need to do with this building, I think, is make it look more 40k. So I got a few sci-fi bits and Cadian. You know, you want to make something 40k, slap a Cadian on there. Last gun is optional, but I did it there to reinforce a little bit more. And I like to make my Cadians look like proper soldiers, like proper Cadians. Like this guy was clinging on to his gun until the very last minute. Now I did a few other things, some chains, some wires coming out of this thing, some barbed wire, and I found this little piece of terrain that has some rebar sticking out. Nice, it'll make it look like it's a lot more 40k, a lot more modern than just this sort of pile of masonry. Now a bit of rubble all around the building, of course, to sort of hide the gap between the building and the base. And now it's time for some skulls and a bit of paint later. This is what the base looks like. A nice little contained diorama with this Cadian who either dragged himself there or was dragged there and left to bleed out. On the other side, it's all pretty dark, pretty muted, a little bit of green in there, because that way it contrasts nicely with the Demon Prince sitting on top of it. Because he's a whole lot brighter, his skin is a whole lot lighter, and he has quite a lot of red in him. So then making the base a little bit green contrasts nicely with the red. But looking at him like this, I feel like I missed one thing. I didn't really finish the purity seals. And I have this transfer sheet over here, and there's these runes on here next to the Night Lords, so I'm assuming that's from the Night Lords. Night Lords fans, you can tell me what these all mean, but I'm just gonna see if I can scribble a few of these onto these purity seals. But then the question is, how do those straps of skin get onto this beast? I mean, is he sentient enough? Is he lucid enough to write things himself and pin it to his own body? Or does he have thralls, you know, serfs, like a vampire has, that are maybe under his spell or revere him as a god itself, and they bring their offerings to him? Or maybe the Night Lord's warband that this thing is roaming around with has some wicked, cruel ritual. Maybe they send in their prisoners, see if the prisoners can pin the strap of flesh onto a nail of this beast. Or maybe they have a sort of Night Lord style kind of bullfighting where they strip down, they remove their armor, put down their weapons, get a strap of skin from the latest victim. They write their name on it, and then the goal is to pin it onto this monster without getting a scratch. You tell me, what do you think?